the ramp dropped, you walked out into this haze of heat and humidity, and it was staggering. By the time I walked 1.5 kilometers up the runway to where the rest of the commando was set up, I was no good. It took me an hour just to put my rucksack down and figure out where I was going to set up some shade. It was amazing.
All letters back home, the very first letter of the guy on the ground, and I've talked to many guys about this. My first letter back home is saying, I would tell my family, turn the oven on to 500, open the oven, let it heat up, open the oven door, and stick your head in and try to breathe. That's exactly what it felt like. You know, it just, everyone's first enemy, I guess in the first 2 weeks, was the heat. The heat was unbelievable, especially coming from a dry, cold Canadian winter to Somalia and Djibouti, which are the hottest countries in the world. It was mind-boggling what it was like.
In late 1992, Canada sent 927 troops in support of an American-led invasion of Somalia in Northeast Africa. Warlords in the capital city of Mogadishu were disrupting humanitarian food deliveries, and Canada's Airborne Regiment, plus support engineers, a helicopter squadron, a reconnaissance contingent, and HMCS Preserver made up 2% of a coalition force from 22 countries. This was war.
Going in under a Chapter 7 mandate and having enough ammo to support ourselves in a firefight was the greatest thing for us. We were like, right on. We are now going to do the job that most of the guys who'd been in for 20 years, spent their lives on the training areas in Canada practicing to do.
When we did the mobile air assault into Beledweyne, which became our ultimate responsibility, that was a totally unpacified area, and the Americans were flying air cover with fighter aircraft as the Hercs went in and the soldiers rolled off the back and the helicopters unloaded troops on the ground. I mean, the first night that we were there, we were dug in trenches on the airfield, and you could hear gunfire all over in the town. The level of threat that was portrayed to us was essentially what you were seeing, what anyone was seeing on CNN at the time. You know, technicals with heavy machine guns mounted, you know, truckloads of armed men and boys driving around.
12-year-old kids with AK-47s and bayonets on the end of their rifle.
Just a Wild West setting completely. So it was a very unstable environment.
The political and military instability in Somalia reflected confusion about the mission at home. Canada was at war without the knowledge of its people. Most thought Canadian troops going to Somalia were on a peacekeeping mission. Some insist the Mulroney government took deliberate steps to avoid parliamentary discussion by reassigning peacekeepers going to Somalia to an invasion ordered by American President George Bush.
We have to look at Somalia in the context of the early 1990s. This was the New World Order. Everyone was now cooperating. The Russians, the Americans, the Chinese. We were actually going to get things done. The UN was actually going to be an effective organization to save people from starvation and hunger and disease and avarice and what have you. That was the original impetus for going into Somalia. What people often forget about Somalia, looking back on it now, is that the nature of that mission changed very radically from the time that it was first proposed to the time that the troops actually got on the ground.
We've been previously planning for a peacekeeping operation under the UN in northern Somalia.
The first mission involved a smaller unit moving into the northern regions of Somalia to carry out assistance to civil organizations attempting to aid people. It was a reasonably well thought out mission. Commander had made a reconnaissance. That plan was in place. Subsequently, that plan changed. The mission changed. And the Canadians became involved in supporting a US-UN operation based out of Mogadishu.
The situation began with a phone call from President of the United States to our Prime Minister Mulroney, asking him to participate in this, and Mulroney apparently agreed to do this.
It was originally supposed to be what we call a Chapter 6, basically non-interventionist, sort of just keep the dust down kind of a mission. And then it changed into a Chapter 7 mission, which is not peacekeeping, but peace enforcement. You go in with loaded guns, and you do not wear the blue beret, and no one mistakes you for being an international Boy Scout, because if they do the wrong thing, you blow them away.
When the mission changed from op cordon to op deliverance, and it went from Chapter 6 peacekeeping to Chapter 7 peacemaking, and we got off the airplane in Baladogle in the plus 40 weather with our magazines fully loaded and M72 anti-tank rockets on our back, grenades in our pockets, and ready to go. Hey, we were the happiest guys in town that we'd focused on combat type training.
People went to considerable trouble to make it sound like it was another UN operation. They called it UNITAF. And I think this is a deliberate move on the part of the political leadership in this country to avoid having to mobilize public opinion to put our troops into battle. As the saying went, when Mulroney says jump, you jump. The question's how high? And you didn't have people who were willing to stand up and said, we ain't jumping.